and welcome back to the channel. This Dachshund puppy drawing was a project over on my website recently. I had been looking through the free reference photograph site, Unsplash, and I came across this beautiful little face. I love the colour of the coat and I decided that I just had to draw him. As with all my drawings, I wanted to bring realism into the portrait, so I knew that I'd be focusing on the shapes and the contrast to achieve a realistic looking dog. I used Faber-Castell polychromos and I used Fabriano Artistico to draw on. The paper comes in both 300 GSM and 640 GSM, and I used the 300 GSM for this particular drawing. The complete tutorial's over in the Art membership and on Patreon now, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. There's also a link in the description for a free tutorial that you can follow along with if you want to have a go at drawing with colour pencils and are interested in learning more. You'll find that useful whether you're a complete beginner or whether you've been using colour pencils for a while and you just want to develop your skills a little bit further. But back to this video. Let's dive into some of the techniques and the process used to draw this little dog. Don't forget, if you'd like to see more tips and tutorials like this one, hit that subscribe button now and let's get started. So as with all my animal and pet drawings, I start with the eye. I like to capture a lifelike eye from the beginning so that the dog looks as if he is alive right from the outset. I start with a sharp dark sepia pencil from the Polychromos pencil range. The lines will be quite dark here around this eye, so I'm not concerned about erasing the graphite pencil in this area. It's going to be covered by the colour pencil anyway. The eye is really quite an important area. It's usually the focus of the drawing, and I want to make sure that I look at the reference photograph every couple of seconds to make sure that I get the correct information from the photograph down on the paper and in the right place. Once I've outlined the eye, I plot in the pupil with a dark pencil, just so that I know that I've got it in position before moving on. I know that I'm not going to lose those lines. I want to start thinking about getting some colour into the iris area. So after putting down a light grey base layer, I start to bring in some colour using Bista and some burnt ochre. I want to make sure that those pencil strokes work away from the pupil and follow the curve of the eye so that I can make the eye look realistic. Adding a darker colour at the top of the eye and under the eyelid will also really help to capture that realism in the eye. I'm also using a dark sepia pencil and then a burnt umber pencil to add a darker area at the bottom of the iris, and this helps with the 3D effect of the eyeball. I've chosen burnt umber as a colour to add to the darker area here, as it works well with the orange colours like the burnt ochre and the yellow tone of the Bista colour, which are both going into the iris. When I'm working on the fur in any area, around the eye or otherwise, I'll choose a base layer depending on the colours that I can see in the fur. Here I'll be adding lots of browns and oranges into the coat, so I'm using a warm grey one from the Polychromos to use as a base layer. There's a little bit of pink in this area too, and so I'm adding a bit of cinnamon to tip that grey colour, to tip that warm grey colour towards a muted pink. The white areas, like the white part of the bottom of this eye, are usually not actually that white. And I'm using a cold grey 1 pencil to just tone the white of that eye down a little bit. Shaping the side of the eye is quite important. The space to the left of this eye will also shape the nose and the face. I've added a base layer of cinnamon and nugget, and now I'm working in with a darker brown, working in the direction of the fur to add a darker area next to the eye. I'm checking the photograph to check whether the edges of an area are soft edges, hard edges, or whether the area is a lost edge. And that means that the edge just completely disappears into its surrounding area. These edges are important things to check in the reference photograph. That information is quite important to get down into the drawing. The area that comes off the corner of the eye is another important area on the portrait. It can be quite a complex area because it's usually got several changes of fur direction. The fur comes from the corner of the eye down towards the nose, but it also meets the fur which starts to travel over the edge of the nose and down onto the cheek, as well as fur that's going up the nose towards the back of the head. I need to pay close attention to the part of the nose that's that starts to curve over the cheek area. If I get this area too far over towards the eye, I'll make the nose look too wide. And if I get the curve of the fur too far over towards the other eye, the nose will look too narrow, and both will mean that the nose won't look realistic for this particular breed of dog. Once I've plotted the direction of the fur in and I'm happy with that, I can go back in with a brown pencil, and I'm using a Van Dyke brown here, and also the burnt ochre pencil, the orange pencil, to start to develop the fur texture. And I'm using little dashes that I'm curving in the direction of the fur. There are areas of this Dachshund's fur that is actually quite dark, and I'm using a black pencil to pick up on a bit of texture and darken down areas to help with the structure of the face and to help with the dimension. Working down onto the nose, I use the warm grey one as the base layer again, and then I'm going in with the burnt ochre and the cinnamon to tint that base layer towards that orange pink colour. And then just like before, once I've created those underlayers, I'll come in with the fur texture using the dark brown colours. By this time now, I've added several layers of pencil, and the tooth of the paper is actually starting to get filled in. And it's starting to allow me to get some nice fine pencil strokes to create the texture. I still want the pencil strokes to be soft. I don't want them to be really hard marks. So I need to be mindful of that. I want to make sure that I erase the graphite pencil line on the edge of the nose here. I'm using my Tombow Mono Zero eraser to do this because it will take all of the graphite back off the paper. And it's important to remove it all because the colour pencil in this area is going to be a really light colour, and the graphite pencil is likely to show through the finished drawing, and pencil lines will take away from the realistic look, so I definitely want to remove them. Once I've removed the pencil line, I go back in with a base layer of the light grey. Not much pencil will go in here, so I want to start to think about the direction of the fur from the very beginning. I'm paying particular attention to the edge of the nose again, the area where it curves over onto the cheek. I want to make sure that I curve the fur over at the correct point so that I don't make the nose too wide or too narrow. I want to make sure that the colours on the nose are desaturated and muted, so I blend every now and again with a grey pencil. I'm using a warm grey 2 pencil here to desaturate and blend the pencil strokes. At the side of the nose, the fur starts to come down towards the cheek. I'm plotting in the direction of the fur with the light base layer again. I find that plotting in areas with the base layer is really useful. It's such a light colour, but I can still see whether things look right at this very early stage. And if I've got a shape wrong or something's going in the wrong direction, the colour's so light that I'll be able to just easily adjust the pencil mark. I won't need to erase anything. I can just adjust the direction of the pencil marks as I go. The colour on the side of the cheek is quite bright compared to the rest of the fur, and I'm adding a bright orange colour under the other layers of pencil to help keep the colours brighter and more saturated in this area. And then I start to come in with the other colours of the fur that I've already been using. I'm thinking about the values. I want to make sure that I add darker areas to help create the shape of the face. I'm looking at the reference photograph. I can see that there's a darker area where the edge of the nose meets the face, and I want to make sure that I keep a darker value here to represent that on the drawing. I'm carrying on with the same colour combination in the muzzle area, and I'm making sure that the pencil strokes follow the direction of the fur as I can see it on the reference photograph. I need to turn this flat piece of paper into a 3D shape, and I'll do this by building up the darker areas and the lighter areas. The way that the light areas and the dark areas go down on the paper will create the dimension of the drawing. And this is known as contrast or values, and it's the most single important element for creating realistic drawings. As always, when I start to draw a nose of an animal, I start to plot the basic shapes of the nose in first. And from there, I'll go on to add a base layer and then add more shapes in with the midtones. I'm checking that reference photograph to see where the edges are soft or hard or lost, and adding that information into the drawing using really light pressure with my pencils. As with the rest of the drawing, I'll blend the nose as I go. I'm using a light pink pencil to keep those pink brown tones coming through the nose area, and I want to make sure that I keep the pencil strokes following the shape of the nose. Once I've built up the shape and texture of the nose, the last thing I'll do is check the values, and by that I mean check the contrast, check the lights and the darks to make sure the nose looks like a 3D shape curving around the dog's face. In this particular drawing, the light source is coming from the top left of the screen. So the nose will be lighter on the top and darker underneath towards the bottom of the nose as the nose curves around the dog's head. On the top of the head, I want to make sure that the graphite pencil line has gone. So again, I'm taking this out with my Tombow eraser. There won't be too much detail on this part of the head. I want to make sure that the area is softly focused and desaturated, and that's going to help with the dimension and the perspective. I'm bringing in some colour with the cinnamon pencil and the burnt ochre pencil, and then I start to add brown pencils to add some depth to the fur. I want to keep the area soft, so after every couple of layers I'll blend with the lighter colours like cinnamon, and if the area is becoming too saturated, and by that I mean the colours becoming too intense and too bright, I'll go in and I'll blend with the grey too, to just make sure that I keep that colour a little bit more muted. At this point, I start to move towards the ear. Adding the shadow in is actually quite important as it shows that the ear is sitting off the head slightly. And this again helps with the dimension of the dog's head. There's actually a dark shadow running along the edge of the ear, and that shows that the ear is slightly closer to the viewer's eye than the rest of the head. Moving on to the ear itself, I add a base layer of warm grey 1 again. I'm covering the whole of the ear area, and I'll work on the ear in one go, building up the fur one layer at a time. I want to make sure that I get a smooth, even coverage. It doesn't really matter what pencil strokes I use, whether they're circular pencil strokes, whether it's just literally colouring backwards and forwards. As long as I can get a nice, smooth, even coverage, that's all I'm looking for in this area. Once the initial base layer is down, I come back in to add more underlayers with the cinnamon and the burnt ochre again. And once those underlayers are down, I'll come in with a brown pencil. I'm using the Van Dyke brown from the Polychromos range, and I start to plot the shapes in. Once the shapes are plotted in and the ear starts to take shape, I go back in with the burnt ochre and start to add some more of this orange colour. This helps to blend the layers that have gone down, and it also helps to fill in the grain. From there, it's a case of just going backwards and forwards between the lights and the darks to build up the form of the ear and to fill in the grain of the paper. I want to always make sure and check that any fur direction that I do put in the ear does go the right way, and again I need to check the reference photograph for that. Every layer that goes down helps the ear to become more saturated in terms of colour, adds texture and makes the ear look more realistic. It's not till we get to the final layers of the fur that I start to think about adding a darker brown pencil to add and refine the fur texture. I want the fur to be soft, so I've kept the underlayers a little bit soft and fuzzy. I haven't put so much detail into those layers, but I now start to bring in a little bit of fur details and a bit of fur texture into the upper layers. Once I'm happy that I've got some fur texture into the ear, I start to think about final blending, making sure that I've got rid of any bits of grain of paper that I want to get rid of. And I'm using a beige red from the Polychromos here to fill in those last little bits of grain and to blend the layers of pencil that have gone down. Using a lighter colour like the pink pencil here will lighten the area a little bit. So if I need to, I can go back in with a brown pencil to add a glaze of the brown colour and add a richness into the fur of the ear again. The area under the neck is quite a dark solid colour, and I can't see too much direction of fur in this area, so circular strokes are useful to get a smooth even coverage of pencil. And then I go back into the directional strokes with the pencil on the front of the neck to help shape the fur, help shape the curve of the neck and help shape those very soft folds of skin that we can see under the neck. And here we are. Here's my finished portrait. A cute little puppy face with Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils on hot press paper. Hope that you've enjoyed this mini tutorial. If you have, please give it a like before you go. That would be really helpful, thank you. And if you want to see more free tutorials like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's already lots of content here on the channel to get your coloured pencil journey started or to help you develop your skills. And I regularly add videos and tutorials so that I can share tips and techniques with you that I've learned as part of my own journey. If you want to follow along with the full Dachshund tutorial, which comes with a line drawing and supply list, you'll find that over in the art membership on my website, teresajoyfineart.com. The tutorial is split into several videos and I draw the dog from start to finish, explaining my complete process as I go. Subtitles for the tutorial are available in 8 different languages, and I'm always around to answer your questions or provide support whenever you need it. If you've got any questions about this tutorial, feel free to leave those in the comments. I'm always happy to help. Okay, that's it. I hope you found the video useful. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.